Happy New Year, everyone. So this should be the last video I make of 2024, and I think it should be a relatively important one because these are two devices that are kind of the pinnacle of e-ink note-taking, in my opinion. And there are a lot of factors to decide between the two. So I've made a laundry list of items here to discuss that are pretty important, I think, if you're considering these two devices. So the first thing to consider is the screens. The Manta is black and white and has a higher PPI, so it's crisper and the definition and contrast are better, whereas the Gallery 3 screen has some compromises because of the color, and that is why they also added the front light here. But the general contrast and the black tones versus the white tones will not be as good on this as they will be on this. But that being said, if you do use color and you want accurate highlights in yellow, the Paper Pro is the better option. So it's really important to evaluate your note-taking needs. If black and white is the way you take notes, then that is something that will be better on the Manta. If you do use color, then Gallery is probably one of the best options for the vibrancy of color. But one compromise you'll note with color note-taking is that it does sort of a reflashing. So you'll see when I'm zooming or panning around to, it has to reflash everything. So actually, if you're using this with just black and white, that will not happen. It's only when you introduce the color palette into the note-taking that will happen. And then because they had to put a front light in this, the front light could be good if you are someone that reads a lot of documents and PDFs and books. We'll talk a little bit more about books later. The Manta is much lighter at 375 grams. The Paper Pro is about 150 grams heavier because it's a larger screen and it's metal construction with a glass screen. So this is over a pound, and then when you add the pen and the folio, it does become a relatively heavier device than the Manta. I really like the Chrome extension. You can just send Chrome documents via the Remarkable extension, and it just pops right in here, and then you can read it and annotate it right here, which is pretty seamless. The Supernote does not have a feature like that. And then with the screen tech, the ghosting on the Manta is a little bit worse, but they do have the gesture to kind of refresh it, where you swipe up here, it reflashes the screen, and then it gets rid of any ghosting. Whereas the Paper Pro has a little bit of a smarter system inside of it, where it does localized re-rendering of areas. And in that sense, you get less ghosting in here, but sometimes you will have a little bit of a leftover yellow kind of background ghost that happens with the Gallery technology. So to each their own, kind of. Another big thing to consider in these is the file formats. So the Remarkable is very limited in the file formats. Basically, for books, you need EPUBs, and there's no Kindle access, whereas on the Manta there is. And then this also does like CDZ, which are comic formats, and a bunch of other ones that I'll list on the page here. But the Remarkable, pretty much if you want to read most things, you have to get it into a PDF form to pop it on here. So the versatility on the Manta is much better for file formats. And the Manta, like the Kindle app I was just talking about, has the ability to Android sideload, which I've done a video on if you want to check out. But this is just generally much more adaptable to your needs because you can install Android apps and have specific things that you might use. Like I use Libby, I use Hoopla a lot on here, and those are nice for reading, but with the caveat that you have no front light. All right, so in terms of the organizational workflow, there's quite a difference. The Supernote platform has a lot more organization. So there's headings where you can create table of contents. It has keywords. It has star functionality where you can quickly do a star and it will recognize it, and then it'll save those and you can search. The OCR also happens in the background, so it converts everything in the background so everything's searchable. You can link things like this website here, for example. If I click here, it'll go to the website if I was on internet. So on the Remarkable, the organizational workflow is very simple. It's basically just like digital paper. You have to create tags for everything that you want to be searchable. And so there's a big difference in those. And then really quickly, just in terms of the actual like functionality of the paper, you cannot scroll up or down. You cannot pinch or zoom. Whereas this, you have the ability to infinitely scroll down. You can basically zoom in or out up to, I think, 5 times and then down to 0.5. So it creates this kind of infinite canvas kind of style. So there's a big difference between the two in that sense. But that brings me to another point here, the shapes. Supernote just added lines in a beta, and so they are a little bit behind in the game. They have not added shapes yet, but hopefully that's something that they will add soon. But if you want something that has that currently, this is your better option. And another kind of specific thing to the platforms is the pens. So the Remarkable, this is the Marker Plus, and it has a battery now. It's a USI active stylus, so it's generally good. The latency is better at 0.12 milliseconds. I believe the latency, Khaled just put out a review of the Manta, so better than the Nomad, but not as good as the Remarkable Paper Pro, which has the best latency of all these devices. Maybe recharging could be a downside, but the battery life is generally pretty good. And the recharging happens on the side here. So anytime you put it here, it's charging. So if you always keep it docked, that's not going to be an issue at all. But the other thing is replacing the tips. So I believe there are 6 tips included in the package. So it should last you roughly a year, because I'm about 3 months into owning this and I'm through like 1 tip, and this one's probably halfway gone. So I would say every 2 months you probably want to change tips. Obviously it depends on the amount you write. Because I have multiple devices, I don't write on this as much as I would if it were my main device. The other thing is the wobble. So when you try to draw lines sometimes, you'll get a little bit of wobble in that. For general note taking, it's very good, but for making shapes sometimes or having very accurate lines, if you're not doing the line snapping, that is an issue that could be relevant to your use case. And then on the Supernote platform, you don't get the replacement. So the replacement will cost you over time. You'll have to buy maybe a new pack every year, whereas these are never replaced nibs. They're ceramic, and there are a multitude of different options of pens, different styles, and these feel more like pens and less like styluses. But the Feel-Rite 2 film on the Supernote platform is what allows these ceramic nibs to work with this. The finer point control as well on the ceramic nibs is something that I really appreciate when drawing. For note taking, I don't find it's as important, but we'll get to drawing later, and that's something that I do think is a benefit on the ceramic nibs of the Supernote. And then pricing is obviously something pretty important here. So the Supernote Manta is generally cheaper, but depending on maybe the pen you get and the folio, it can get up there to like the 600 range. And I've even seen in Europe that it can be insane with like after shipping and all that, can get in like the 700 or 800 euro range. But you can use a standard Wacom pen on this, which if you're someone that loses pens often, could be a better option if you're going to be rebuying them a lot. So you could use a EMR pen that you already have from Wacom. The Remarkable Paper Pro, you will have to use either their Marker or their Marker Plus. But then like the Remarkable here, you can see the most basic spec here. It's already going to be 668. And then if you get the Marker Plus or some other accessory or a more premium folio, then it will go up in price as well. So you can see here 718. I think it was about 750 when I spec'd it because I ended up getting the blue folio here. But the Manta, it only has the half folio, and so that is one you'll have to buy from Supernote. The Remarkable, it is possible. I'll link, there are some aftermarket ones already for it, which are much cheaper in like the $40 range. So you could save a little bit of money there. And then another thing to consider in terms of overall price is the Remarkable is more expensive, but you will also have to pay for the Connect subscription, which is $2.99 or $2.99 per month. And that you will essentially pay for the rest of your ownership of the device. Whereas Supernote, the cloud system they have is free. But that being said, getting back into the apps, they both have respective apps on the computer or on the phone. I do find the Remarkable app is better and more seamless in their syncing transition. Supernote, I mentioned this in my full review of the Manta, which I just put out, but there's sometimes I can get conflicts between things and it's generally just slower. So I'd like to see them improve that in the Manta. This is always kind of a funny one to me, but some people are really nitpicky about this. The USB-C port is on the bottom of the Remarkable Paper Pro, and the USB-C port of the Manta is on top. I don't think that it's that big of an issue because these have very good battery life in general, and I rarely charge them while I'm using them. I normally have it charged, and then it lasts just a long time. But I know that's a topic of debate amongst a lot of people. And the writing feel, the Manta is more like pen on paper. So I'll let you hear here. And the Remarkable feels much more like pencil on paper. In terms of storage, the Paper Pro has 64 gigabytes. The Manta has 32 gigabytes. but it has an expandable micro SD card that I think goes up to 2 terabytes, so space should never be an issue on that. And in terms of the durability, Remarkable has stated that this is easier to repair, but you are not going to be able to do it yourself unless you are very good with electronics, because it is all adhesives and stuff like that. So it will be easier when you send it to them or send it to a certified repair shop to fix it. But things on the Manta, you should be able to fix yourself because of the open design of the modularity and repairability. The durability on the Manta should be better because of the all plastic design. The screen is now plastic too. It's a Mobius screen. And the whole design of the actual product is plastic. Whereas the Paper Pro does feel a little more premium, but it is all metal and glass. And to quote Jerry Riggs everything, glass is glass and glass breaks. And then in terms of other integration, on the Supernote, you have the Supernote Cloud. You also have Dropbox integration, Google Drive, or OneDrive integration. The Remarkable Paper Pro, you do have Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, and Dropbox integration as well. So in that respect, they're pretty equal. And then if you are someone that draws, I think they're both really good for drawing. I was surprised at how much I liked the Remarkable Paper Pro for drawing with the new shader tool and just colors in general. It's pretty fun. It's something that I've actually been doing a lot. And having the front light can be nice for that because sometimes I do find myself drawing in like darker scenarios. But the Atelier app on the Manta or the Nomad is very good, and it is a dedicated drawing app. And I do like having a more comfortable pen for drawing. So I can draw on this longer than I will on the Remarkable Paper Pro. I hope this comparison was useful for you in deciding which one of these might be better for your note-taking needs. If you want to see the Manta more, I did a full review here. And I will be putting out a review of the Remarkable Paper Pro soon here, so you can check that out. Happy New Year, and thanks for watching.